you have gotten to a point where you can't trust your own organs of state as the person who has created them. And you go and fetch the private sector, which is white, by the way, which is white. It's no secret that Mediclinic, Netcare are white-run companies. And if they are competent, let's have them.
We're going to be unpacking what the way forward is in South Africa, because questions around transformation, whether or not we opt for capitalism or socialism, whether or not we opt for Starlink, there's many thoughts, many considerations, many conversations. As always, I'm with my co-host, Utsile Nkadimen. How are you doing today?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well. And today we're joined by Kuhle Maseko. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Kuma. I'm good, Utsile. It's very great to be here.
Question around Elon Musk. And we know recently Elon Musk and Donald Trump's relationship has taken a bit of a hit. We don't necessarily know where it stands now. Elon Musk has apologized, and it seems like they're trying to build some sort of bridge. They're trying to re-engage. Looking at a wider geopolitical scale, but also looking at what's happened with the developments in the Oval Office, conversations around AGOA, do you think it's a good stance to appease someone who's such a close ally to Donald Trump? Because, of course, some people have claimed security concerns. I don't necessarily stand to say that's what it is. I think, of course, there'll be data collection. It's very much important to Elon Musk, and he loves doing that. But from a South African standpoint, from a point of who do we do business with and who we shouldn't, there's a grave concern around Elon Musk, the person. He's willing to do anything and everything to ensure that Starlink is brought into the country, and he's willing to spread lies. I mean, the white genocide very much wasn't necessarily founded by him. It was very much the fringe rights in South Africa. But he was one of those people who continued to harp on it. He was one of those people who continued to use it as a platform where his real concern was not cooperating with BEE. So when you think of Elon Musk in terms of his influence, but also the person that he is, do you think it's actually a viable opportunity for the South African government? Or do you think we're going to be bullied in the ways Cyril Ramaphosa says we refuse not to be bullied?
Well, firstly, I think one of the most important things to understand is when you look at this, right, firstly, BEE was already an issue within itself, as in it limited a huge space in the business market for other competitors who did not want to, for a lack of a better word, to say, have black shareholders in their companies or open up their businesses to black people, And I won't go down the road of tenderpreneurs and all sorts because I'll just focus on the law itself for now. And now you've got to link this back to Elon and the whole Trump issue and all sorts. Now, the thing with Elon, the very interesting part is you somewhat do need him. He's sort of like that school bully that you need in order to survive. Like, don't be on his bad side. Accept the abuse, but at least you'll make it. At least you'll see another day, That's Elon for me. And it's a thing of, in life, get used to sucking up, guys. You really need to assess your position in life and see, okay, look, South Africa's economy makes up 0.4% of the global GDP, if I'm not mistaken. And take that and compare it to a country like America, which surpasses, So you've got to often look at that and say, okay, by nature, would obviously be subservient towards the Americans. Farm murders happen when it comes to the whole white genocide. But a genocide is such a, because you go into the whole thing of numbers once you start saying how many, but the point is... genocide. Yes, I acknowledge farm murders happen, cool, but it's not a white genocide. South Africa is a regressive country, a very racist country towards white people, a country that actually has gone around and turned around apartheid, and sort of subjected white people to some form of abuse.
Yeah. I think what became very telling is, as everyone should remember, before he went to the Oval Office, or before President Ramaphosa went to the Oval Office, Elon Musk, I think, did an interview with the BBC, and he spoke quite significantly about the racism that's being imposed on white people in South Africa. And people mention the 142 race roles that exist, and we've had conversations with AfriForum to unpack what those things are. I think my biggest thing with how this conversation tends to take place is that there's very limited statistics to say that there's been a massive hindrance to investment or there's been a hindrance to operations for companies in South Africa as a result of BEE. And it's been most telling actually recently with all of the big cellular networks all going to Parliament and speaking about how they've been operating and speaking about how they've been able to exist within South Africa. Notably, two things happened. Firstly, one, a lot of them recognize that they have relationships with Starlink outside of South Africa. So the introduction to Starlink isn't necessarily going to harm us. But I think the most telling thing is that none of them attested to BEE being an issue in terms of how they run their business practices. And so I guess I'm curious to know, where does your concern about BEE come in? Because yes, there might be instances in where international companies are saying that they don't want to cooperate with the South African government and they don't want to cooperate with the South African laws. But looking at it from a very macro scale, that would be almost in some capacity contradictory to this belief that we have a democracy, we have sovereignty, and we have laws. And so there's always this balancing act. And I think this balancing act is really going to be tested now with Starlink as these conversations continue to go on and as the minister continues to push for Starlink coming into South Africa about whether or not laws should apply to international companies within South Africa. But secondly, whether or not BEE is the future. And so what I would ask then for you is to particularly explain what the concern is for BEE from your standpoint, because I think everyone has a different read on it. This tends to be very similar, but I'd love to hear what your stance is from there.
Well, you must remember, look at the cellular network or telecommunications companies that you raised right now. Remember, Vodacom is a subsidiary of Vodafone. You need to ask yourself, why is that? You know, why didn't they just set Vodafone here? Why do you have to create a little company to come and operate in another country? You know, and it's around such issues. Now, also remember that BEE limits competition. Big businesses love BEE. Believe it or not, they love BEE. In fact, they love government policies. Because government policies tend to protect big businesses. And they actually, you need to ask yourself one question. Which company was started by BEE or was started using BEE?
Yes.
And is thriving till this day. You know, there's an auditing firm or accounting firm called Sizwe and Zaluba. The thing is dead. So it was a BEE project. It died a natural death. And it goes back to say, BEE has got a number of issues. Some people believe that its implementation is incorrect. I differ. I used to have that belief that no, perhaps it's implementation, but no. I had to sit down and actually do a deep study and analysis over BEE. And I'll start with some of the facts. BEE has costed South Africa 4 million jobs. And this is a study that has been done by the Free Market Foundation. We are good friends with them, Mr. David Ansara and the rest. It's costed about 4 million jobs. It's costed the South African economy 5 trillion rands. And now, if you look at that alone, take the 4 million jobs. You know, those are 4 million jobs that belonged to more black people than white people. So the same law which was meant to advance black economic empowerment by jobs, because by virtue of you having a job, you are part of the economy, has actually removed you from the economy. The same policy has actually done the opposite of what it was trying to achieve. Because you must remember, for white people, unemployment levels are very low.
Yes.
Extremely low compared to black people. So any form of improvement in the employment rate in South Africa will most likely be for black people. It will never be for white people. Just in general. And I'm coming to that from a racial perspective because the law is a racial law in a way. Now, look at that way. Now, don't forget, what does BEE say to you as a young black professional? BEE says, we have been, it's been 35 years of democracy, if you don't count 1994, because democracy, some people will count from 1990, arguably, because, So let's say it's 35 years, subjective. Now, those are, in 35 years, you've got 2 generations of people that have gone through the entire schooling system, because 18 plus 18 is 36. That means you've got two generations that have been able to complete from start to end, right? Now, you ask yourself, after 2 so-called or 3 generations, do all these people, and black people in particular, still need a cushion in order to be part of the economy? Because what BE is actually telling you is, oh gosh, Sandisa, we don't see you as talented. You can't run against John. So we need to create softer requirements for you. We need to just somehow pamper you so that you can just get in. That's how it is, quite literally. And I'll be honest, as someone who has been in the working environment, is people who have often gotten in like that, you've got this inferior complexion. What's the word?
Inferiority complex.
Yes, inferiority complex. Where you come in and you sort of feel like, okay, I didn't come in based on merits. I'm here because I'm black. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And that's what's happening. And that's what BE does. BE is actually killing black people. It actually is. And people don't realize this thing, because you remove the essence of merit amongst black people. Because it's a thing of, I know I'll get it just because I'm black. It really is. It really is. And I know I'm sounding like these doomsday sayers, but you've got to ask yourself a question. Is Themba Bavuma the captain of the Proteas because he's talented? After they've bashed him so much? They've been bashing him for years now. Or is it because he's black? So oftentimes people do this thing from a moral perspective. It's not morals, it's like an obligation, moral obligation. Because you're black, you know what? Just take it. So it removes the essence of hard work amongst black people. Hence I'm saying that BE is a danger to black people. And don't forget, South Africa is not the only country that has used transformation laws. Take Malaysia. Malaysia, a country that you could compare to South Africa any day. They had their own form of BE, where it has kept them poor. It kept them poor for many years. Their form of BE, till the people actually realize, scrap all the transformation, all the government kickbacks, all this government assistance and red tape. Just let the private sector be. I mean it. I really, really mean it. And it's going to become a competitive place. It really is. It's going to become a competitive place. Do you know that black people in the United States have got a higher chance of becoming a millionaire than a black person in South Africa? Even though there is BE in South Africa. Why is that? That is because there's a competitive environment in society. So hence I'm saying, you look at Singapore. Singapore and Malaysia, one country. They separated. Malaysians took the whole BE, their own form of BE, which kept them back. The Singaporeans had a capitalist view on things. Let us move on. Let us work towards a certain vision. And the problem is BE does not create a vision. BE tries to create a form of equality without teaching people. Last point on this. Do you know that when Afrikaners came to South Africa, they found a company called Old Mutual, which was run by the English for many years. The Afrikaners went to the English and said, please teach us how an insurance company works. Show us, just teach us how this thing works, explain to us. And that is how Sanlam and Santam were both born and became Afrikaans companies in a way. Now, the issue with BE is not teaching black people how to start things. BE is teaching black people, be included. Just be thrown in there and be included to a point where you never start something. You lack a skill of understanding how things actually work, because the only thing you knew was, oh gosh, I'm here because there's an equity requirement that the company needs to meet. That's BE for you. BE is it's a knowledge sucking, it's a skill sucking thing that is eating away from young, talented black people. It's doing more harm to black people than it does to white people.
But I can sense your passion on this. I think it's very evident to those listening. But, the other end of the scale says that fundamentally it's a redress policy. That apartheid was more than just a system of racial laws that were meant to oppress people by means of the security forces, but it was also an economic cap that they put on the black community. One thinks of businessmen like Dr. Richard Maponya talking about the fact that that structure at the time kept them from certain sectors. The architects of BEE would argue that we are looking at saying the system as it was constructed in South Africa was not built in such a way that black people can easily be accommodated by just letting the system, the market correct itself.
Yes,
that fundamentally the market will go to what it is used to. And unfortunately, at the time of its implementation, it was white men, white women, people that did not look like us three in this room. So maybe speak to the argument that it's a redress policy. If we remove BEE from the equation, how do we give a certain assurance to people that there will still be a place for black people? Because the CEO of Bidvest Group, Bumi Matisa, she likes to make the point that she is there as a result of BEE, that the opportunity was given to her because of it, but that it was also given to other competent, capable, young black professionals at the time in an environment that would otherwise not have given her that space. So maybe speak to those people that are listening to your arguments saying, makes sense on this point, but for the purposes of transformation and practical redress in a market sector that looks predominantly white, still 30 years. I go 31 years. I don't go 36, but 31 years post the dispensation. Those young black professionals who are in the space and saying, yeah, we're here, BE got us here, but still the space, we're pushing, we're working, but it's still not geared towards us.
So, Otsile, I think such a loaded question, but a very important question nonetheless, is you ought, in life, you come across struggles and all sorts, but there ought to be a time where you've got to stop blaming your past for your present struggles. Like, there really does. You really ought to get to a point where you're like, oh gosh, it's been 30-something years now. I cannot be stuck in this mindset of, because Hendrik Verwoerd did this to my not to me, to my great, he didn't even do it to our parents, to their grandparents. This is why today I don't have a loaf of bread in my cupboard, referring to the fact that one is being poor. But now, understand this. Japan, after World War II, being bombed, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, 30 years. They take an economy that was downright bad, flat. In 30 years, it's part of the top 5 biggest economies in the world. Top 5 biggest economy. That's Japan. I can also quote the same for Germany and many other countries. Vietnam, same story. Communism, after 50 years, boom, thriving economy. Now, the trick is with South Africa. South Africa is a country with so much potential. It's that kid in class that if he could just study, gosh, he could be number 1. But he's just making it through just because he's naturally smart, but he's not doing well. And that is South Africa in its sense. And it's important to remember that when you speak about redress now, you've got to ask yourself, what has the ANC? You must speak to the government. There's a policy that can be written on paper. It's all well and fair. Good that the policy is there, but what is it doing? What is the ANC doing for black people when we speak about redress? A real question. What are they doing for black people? During apartheid, there were schools, right? Bantu education. But one thing about the apartheid government, there was no container school. There were no, the container schools that are being built here in Gauteng. These actually started within this new administration, the post-apartheid administration of the ANC. And I'm not defending apartheid regime and saying, oh, they loved black people. No. What I'm trying to say is the ANC have failed black people. The ANC continue to abuse black people. And the ANC also, they are like that boyfriend, abusive boyfriend, that buys you flowers after slapping you, and then you think that they love you. But it doesn't change the fact that he hit you. And that is the ANC. Because you've got 30 years, you've got to ask yourself, real question. Unemployment is spiraling out of control. You've got an NYDA. These, by the way, NYDA is not a racial thing. It's a youth-driven,
National Youth Development Agency.
Yes. It's a youth-driven organ of the state. Now, ask yourself, because it links back to representation, which is BEE and all sorts. What is it doing? The NYDA, ever since its inception, do you know that youth unemployment has been increasing? Ever since the NYDA's inception, has been increasing. That is like starting a GPV help desk, but GPV keeps on increasing. Then you're like,
South Africa.
Yeah, you're like, but what are we doing? What is it that's wrong that we're doing? Because it doesn't make sense. You've got to ask yourself, and that's the thing with South Africa. We are so stuck in this thing of representation, and representation matters. Yes, to a certain extent, it
does,
really
because
does.
When the majority of the black population doesn't make up the majority of its economy, it's sort of like it's not even a thing of representation. It's a thing of, doesn't this become a national security risk when the majority of the people don't own a share of their own economy?
Yes, but also must remember, that is fair, but I wanted to quote the JSC.
Yeah.
You'll know 30% of the JSC listed companies have now got black CEOs, which is huge progress compared to 31 years ago, where there was no one. It was just Danny Basson and whoever, I mean,
the most Afrikaner name I've ever heard.
Danny Basson and a couple of other brews, who were the CEOs.
Yaputs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, there's Sim Shabalala at Standard Bank doing a fantastic job. Love him. And there's many black professionals that are coming in. And it's to ask yourself, you see, and I'm going to attack BE on this thing. BE is not creating companies. My thing is, I would never fight with BE if it was going to create businesses. Honestly speaking, I love black entrepreneurship. I will be there. I will carry that flag and wave it. I'll even go to my podcast and sing for it. But BE is not encouraging creation of businesses. It's encouraging the inclusion of black people in an existing business. In an existing business. Understand it. Two different things. In an existing business. There's a huge difference here. And oftentimes, BE does not reach you and I.
Yeah.
It
Very
reaches
true.
a connected few.
Yeah.
BE, according to a study by William Gumede,
Biggest flaw.
in 2009, he started in 2009, he says this thing has enriched just about 100 people, not more than 100 people directly. And they've siphoned about 1 trillion rand from South Africa's economy. So what it does is it catches someone's friend, some ANC cadre, whoever it is, who does not understand how business works. He makes 3 phone calls, and that's how it keeps your business alive. That's BEE. Hence, I'm saying that cut BEE, cut red tape. Small businesses, you need to watch. There's a Department of Small Business now. So basically, there's Treasury, you've got Treasury, Finance, Small Business, go on and on and on, DTIC, blah, blah, blah. Don't you guys ever sit and ask yourselves, what are they doing? Like, don't you ever just sit and, because government and BE guys, like, I can go on and on. you touched on such a touchy topic.
Yeah.
The BE creates redundancies or redundant organizations in South Africa. It really does. Why is there a DTIC? Why is there a small Department of Small Business and Enterprise? Why is there? Because oftentimes you're like, this could have just been one department. It didn't need for so many people and so many hands and all sorts. But oftentimes BE ought to achieve that. BE, I'm an IT professional, by the way.
Yeah.
And in information systems, which is the study of IT, the main thing is to cut out people. That's your main objective. Cut out people to make things cheaper. BE is anti that. BE is include hundreds of more people, even if it means that there must be someone that just signs the paper. But oh gosh, just have him, because it's going to create jobs. One of the great American philosophers got to China, and he asked, when China was still a very rural economy, he says, why don't you guys have machines in China? He says, you guys are still using shovels for farming. And then the Chinese government says, so the Chinese president at the time says to him, look, if we have machines, it's going to kill jobs. And then he says, well, then you might as well give these people spoons. Hope you got that.
Yeah.
But exactly. So it goes to those things that BE is just such a...
Yeah. I want to draw back a bit, right? Because I think there's interesting examples that you've used that I think I'm interested to unpack, right? So reference to Germany and Japan post-World War II. Of course, the biggest recognition there was that Americans were very invested in both those economies, right? Which was the same thing that Nelson Mandela thought people would do post-apartheid. They thought they were going to get the same wave of investment because South Africa had transitioned and it was now seen as this new open economy individuals are going to engage. I think differently in both of those instances, you had destitute populations, but it was equal. Everyone was suffering. So there's recognition from both people locally within Germany, locally within Japan, that we were suffering collectively. Mm-hmm. South Africa isn't that, and very much doesn't have the equality, the parity, the opportunities that exist in that capacity. The second thing which is true about South Africa at the moment is that we have a shrinking economy. And this is where I agree. I think to some extent, BE is ineffective. And I don't necessarily think BE is the mechanism to create new businesses, but I think there's recognition to say BE is ineffective in growing the economy. It hasn't necessarily shown that growth, and there's been a great deal of decline due to mismanagement as a result of BE, which put underqualified individuals in jobs, but also with the recognition that the South African economy, there's been more disinvestment. Now, the United States becomes a very interesting example, right? And the reason I say the United States becomes an interesting example is because if we go into the nuances of the United States, Black Americans will remind you every single day that slavery is the reason why they are where they are. Slavery is 400 years ago. And so I think there is some degree in South Africa throughout this entire conversation to say that 30 years has been enough. And I think it's weird because most other oppressed societies get to hold their history for forever. People in Germany, Jewish people in Germany, will attest to what the Nazis did and will attest to the need to teach people about particularly why we can't go back and why we need to care for the humanity that exists within people. So I'm careful around the conversation to say that it's been 30 years because if we really think about it, in 30 years, much hasn't changed. We're only seeing new government officials for the first time in South Africa. The ANC has held the wealth of the majority. So there hasn't been much capacity for people to engage the conversation and engage what is happening. But secondly, I think looking more particularly at BEE, I think a lot of people forget that BEE is a means of getting government contracts. So BEE is the qualification not for all businesses, but if you want to work specifically with government, that you ought to take BEE. And I think that's where the conversation, I think, gets a bit difficult. Because what does then the South African populace do? Because on one end, you've got a very disenfranchised population, which we recognize 60% of the youth unemployed. We recognize 32.9% unemployment generally. These are people who don't have the access to power, who don't have the access to capital, and we recognize as a government that fails in providing that access. BE remains one of the only access points for many Black individuals to engage. Yes, the policy hasn't been great. It hasn't been perfect. But there has to be some degree of recognition to say that it's done something. Because I think the separate conversation, which is the wider conversation in South Africa, and it's the same thing we asked the guy at AfriForum, is I think South Africa very much so is stuck in how do we transform. We're not stuck in what transformation ought to look like, and we're not necessarily engaging with what the way forward is. And I think what that tends to do is that it tends to mean that we end up debating historically old policies, we end up to debate why we think certain things haven't happened or have happened. But the reality of the matter is that in South Africa, the situation hasn't improved. Yes, it's improved for the odd 15% who have been beneficiaries of BEE, but for the majority of the 80% who make up the majority of the country, their life hasn't seen much of an improvement. It's been a steady decline. And so I think where my concern is, and I'm curious to know what you think about this, is that right now where we are in South Africa, now the promise of radical transformation is becoming more and more enticing because people have given up on the more moderate, more slow forms that were embedded through the Mbeki eras that weren't necessarily changed post-Zuma and kind of remained the same under Cyril. But more closely, we're now seeing even greater pushes for more inclusion with the Employment Equity Act, which says that companies ought to reach certain benchmarks. And this is not specifically to race. This includes this includes gender. This includes a variety of things that benefits people of all populace. So is the conversation then to say that the issue wouldn't have been with BEE had BEE generated growth? Or is it to say that transformation by the way in which the government is doing it is incorrect? Because what I am hearing to a great deal is you saying that there needs to be innovation, there needs to be investment into young people, there needs to be upskilling, there needs to be development. But time and time again, I always go, we are an unequal country that's only become more unequal when we've prioritized neoliberal policies. And that's been seen throughout our history. Through Mbeki's era with Gia, which got him kicked out of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa framed very much in that same light of privatization, billionaire, who's trying to essentially, I mean, I don't necessarily hold this belief, but some people will say is in favor of white monopoly capital. There's still a major conversation around South Africa hasn't changed. And for many, it even goes to the extent to say apartheid hasn't ended. It may have ended racially. We may not legislatively say that we are not necessarily not allowed to go there as a result of our race. But economically, it's remained the same. The people who own businesses then are the same people who own businesses now. The new businesses that are coming out are being funded by the people who had old businesses. These are people who continue to show time and time again, they are not pro-transformation. They are not pro-distributing their wealth. So where does transformation then come from? So,
okay, you say quite a lot. Now, when you say pro-distributing your wealth, any person, it's like if you have money, there's no saint that often just says, here you go, take, have money. You never worked for it, but just take it. We'll see how you do it. Just take. And I'm going to link back to that in the same answer. Now, the issue with these transformation laws or equity laws and all these beautiful things that have been created in our president's infinite wisdom is oftentimes they are advertised to black people as
the thing,
as we are killing white supremacy. It literally is. When Bella Bill was advertised, it was, we are killing Afrikaans. Kids, both black and white, will study in the same school, study a language and language of the area, blah, 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 blah. It's how it was advertised, honestly speaking. It was not advertised from a point of, oh gosh, look, there are some things in the Bella Bill which, like everything has got is good and bad. Everything. But the Bella Bill was advertised like that. Hence, you will remember, AfriForum said this is an attack on the Afrikaans language. If you remember, the Bella Bill, they used it. They said this is an attack on the Afrikaans language because that's how it was being marketed. It really was being marketed that way. It was being marketed as a form of equality. That okay, white people gone, the war school is a thing of the past. Now we'll have whatever, and we'll all learn. If the place is English, we'll learn English. If it's Sotho, we'll all learn Sotho. That's Bella Bill. Now, the thing is, with all these wonderful transformation policies that the ANC brings about, whether it's NHI, whether it's EWC, blah, 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 they harm black people more than they harm white people. Like, people don't understand this thing. White people have got the means to pack up and leave South Africa today. Most of them. Most of them. Trump has given them an open card as well. Come. Others have got dual citizenship. They've got ancestry to go back to England if they want to. And once they do that, who's left with the mess? It's us. Because it is a mess. You can't lie and say, no, it's not a mess because somehow we're also being included. No. Understand it for what it is. You've got a system now, like I was saying, Bella Bill. You know, one of the dangerous things in the Bella Bill Act, one of the most dangerous points there, that harms black people the most. There's a part that speaks of the inclusion of, so, you know, you've got illegal immigration in South Africa, which is obviously a huge talking point. I won't go into that. But what obviously, when you've got illegal immigration, you've got a child that comes from these parents, right? Because it's nature. Now, the law allows for that child of an illegal immigrant or illegal immigrants to register in schools. And by and large, most illegal immigrants happen to be black Africans.
Yeah.
So chances are they will not go and register to go to war school. No. They will register to go to Mamelodi Comprehensive Secondary School, where it is 100% black, where there will be, and I kid you not, it's not my views. These are what people are saying. There will be a Sotho woman who will say, my child does not have a space in school because of 1, 2, 3. And then you link this thing back to the Bella Bill. Do you remember when Panyaza Lesufi told a group of grannies that NHI will allow you to go into Mediclinic and just walk in and get healthcare? I'm waiting to see who of them have gotten in. And no one speaks about it. These politicians take these laws. It's false advertising, guys. It really is. It really is false advertising. You take such a law and you sell it as poison, you know. And the thing is, when you sell it to black people, you sell it as if we're trying to get at white people for what they did during apartheid, which is another conversation. And black people will, more oftentimes, will buy into the bait and say, we are 1, 2, 3. You've got to ask yourself a simple question. If Bella Bill was so good, why do Panyaza Lesufi's kids go to Model C schools?
But isn't that just a result of capital?
Yeah, public, but Model C. They are not going to the township. Remember, most of this thing, you want to improve the township schools because there's nothing wrong with the Jeppes boys or with the Pretoria boys either. Education is good. Pass rate is good. The problem is the township school, where they're majority black. Why aren't they going there? If you are so proud of the service that you deliver, please send your life, as I was to say, your livestock, please send your offspring to that school. It's like the healthcare. If the minister and the MEC of health or MMCs go down to local government, if you are so proud, let us scrap medical aids for you. Scrap medical aids. Let's not even have NHI. No, just scrap medical aids. You go to the hospital because it's your work. It's like you saying, I cooked the food, but oh gosh, you know, quickly, I'm not going to eat the food that I cooked.
Yeah.
Why don't you go and consume your own products? Why aren't they do you know MPs in Parliament which voted for the NHI have got their own medical aid? They voted for they've got their own. Why don't they stop their own? If they believe in their conscience that this NHI is the way to go, the first thing, the obvious first thing would be, okay, guys, let's cut our medical aids. Number one, we're wasting money. We believe that the state knows how to run hospitals. We'll go to public hospitals. But no, they don't. They don't. If you go and check the parliamentary village, the parliamentary village used to have police that would look after the MPs. After quite a while, they realized the police are not capable and they fetch private security. You have gotten to a point where you can't trust your own organs of state as the person who has created them. And you go and fetch the private sector, which is white, by the way. Which is white. It's no secret that Mediclinic, Netcare are white-run companies. And if they are competent, let's have them. Because one of the things is, And gosh, I'll probably get in trouble for this, but black people disrespect each other. We really do. We lack respect for each other. You know, a black person does not mind watching another black person a black nurse does not mind watching another young black woman who's pregnant sitting on the floor of a public hospital and do nothing about it. In fact, it becomes an irritation to them, as if we have a shlupa that no, you are disturbing them. But take the same black person to a private hospital, and even if there's another black person in the private hospital, they'll have respect based on the fact that there's money involved now. So basically, what I'm trying to get to is these politicians create a society where they want you to hate white people. You blame all your misfortune on white people and on. Do you know the schools that our models see and in suburban areas, like take Pretoria Boys High? Do you know that most of the way these schools are maintained, right? Because you'll ask yourself, maybe is government maintaining these ones better than the ones in the township, you know? I used to ask myself that question, that how are these ones so good? Like, this is such a beautiful school. And then the one in the township is so whack. And I'm like, I had to do some investigation. I check. These parents, white parents, they go and sponsor the school.
Yeah.
They go and they give back to the school.
Even alumni.
Yes, exactly. They go back. But you know, for most of us, I know very few black alumni in the township who are giving back to their schools. Malema said is building a school. I'm waiting for that school. I've been waiting. I was in school when he said he was going to build the school. I've finished varsity. I've worked, and he's still going to build the school. So, you know, you've got to come to a point when I say that you've got to look within. Enough of blaming the white guy for your misfortune, because you'll never change. Your situation will never improve. Trust me. You cannot try and change white people and think white people will accept you. That is the most outright, you know. It's not. I don't want, like I'm saying, I don't want to turn this into a racial conversation.
Yeah.
But you can never think that for the fact that you say we're being oppressed by this guy, what makes you think that one day you can make him love you? I mean, just honestly speaking, if you're saying I'm being oppressed by one, two, what makes you say no? I'm standing for the values of diversity, equality, and equality, that we can all compete equally.
But we're not starting from the same place.
You see, now you're raising a question of equity now, because that's when you get into the whole debate of equity versus equality, that let's give you this in order to be equal. Oftentimes, equity hurts people. It might improve some people, but it hurts other people, because you often have there's a lesser focus on someone. It's just nature, because you're so focused on this one person now. And that's what equity does. And I will remind you of something. Do you know, for people that have been advantaged for a very long time, any form of equality feels like oppression.
Yes.
Now, when I say that to say there is an exaggeration in some things, like the white genocide, again. But it links back to what I just said. But we cannot run away from the truth that we have had a black government, largely being the ANC, that has failed South Africans. 30 years they've failed. Yeah. They failed. There's no lie. There's no way of sugarcoating it and saying, no, let's give them another 30. I mean, another 30 is us dying. Now, you've got MK, a party filled with state capture looters, and who voted for them? I won't answer, but we all know who voted for them. You've got EFF. EFF is a very... Someone argued with me the other day. They said, we don't need EFF in South Africa. You know, I'm not an EFF supporter, obviously, but I do think they deserve a space, because MK have not defined themselves as to what they stand for. Like, can ask no one knows what MK is, Are they capitalist, are they communist? No one knows. I mean, it's just a Zuma royalist party, Now you've got EFF. You've got
the MK keeps catching strays. Yeah, yo.
I do
not just you, with our guests, it keeps catching strays.
No, it's true, guys, because I'm a political commentator outside of my profession of IT. And I've studied MK, guys. I've got friends in the MK. I keep asking them, I said, I know why the EFF exists. I really do. I might not like them, but I know why they exist. But I don't know why the hell you exist. So it's one of those things that we need to sort of deal with, to speak of rather, is, I mean, you've got a thing of black politicians.
Yeah.
I'll use that very carefully because they call themselves that. And I'm calling them what they call themselves, because in those parties, they refer to themselves as that, and they believe that one day we'll have a communist utopia where somehow Karl Marx will, come back from heaven or hell, wherever he is, and somewhat we'll all be living as equals. It's not going to happen. Communism has failed. Transformation has failed. Leave all that. Let the economy be equal. It will correct itself. It's life. It's naturally it will. And I promise you it will. And I'll tell you how. Do you know that majority of white people know that you need to have black people? Naturally, without BE. They know that I need to include a black person in my structure or involve them in 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
They know naturally without BE being a factor. And that is because, like I'm saying, nature allows it to happen. Nature makes it happen because the apartheid government realized they could not run an economy on just white people. Hence, they involved black people as the years moved on, where you say, okay, black people come and work in the mines. But obviously things are not as oppressive as in the past. And that is how the market will correct itself.
Yeah.
Where you realize that there are so many black people, we need to make them taxpayers in order to regenerate funds. So how do you do that? Give them access to become taxpayers. Don't just make them a teller or a waitress. Give them access. Because at the end of the day, black people are the numbers, and you need a thriving black population in order to have a thriving South Africa.
Yeah. I do want to say this much, and then I want to give you the mic again before we close, because I think it's even interesting in the way that certain conversations have been framed, right? Because NHI, the Bella Bill Act, Expropriation Act, and any of the other acts that exist have nothing to do with race. They don't legislate the race themselves, right? The Employment Equity Act, fair, BE, fair. But the last 3 acts that we've seen have been framed, yes, for a pro-black population, but at no point legislate that it's for a black group. And I'll use it to the same extent to say that language is not race-specific. People like to believe it's race-specific. People like to believe that it's something that's tied to individuals. But the reality is we both sit here speaking English, commonly known as a white language. But to me, it's just a language. And I think a lot of what happens, and I think a lot of what will continue to happen, interestingly enough, is that we are getting more and more voices who are trying to make it about race when it's not necessarily about race. The reality is that when we're talking about NHI, it's likely that if you have anyone who's of service to you and they get injured, you have to drive past 3 private hospitals before you get to a public one, right? And so, yes, there's great recognition, and I recognize to a great deal that the ANC has failed. South Africa has been failed by the ANC, and there hasn't been much improvement. But in terms of the fact that we do have that failure, we still need to answer for it. And so even in the instances where we're speaking about languages and Afrikaans communities want to say that, no, you're coming after our schools. It's not particularly that. It's that there's a black kid in the community who can't speak Afrikaans who's being denied education as a result of the language that they speak.
So why are they going to an Afrikaans school?
No, because it's the only school in the area.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of the time, what we don't recognize is that most of this conversation stems from resources. Most of this conversation stems from the fact that you're able to then have old boys who were able to benefit during apartheid, who are able to give back. We all know that black people don't just have necessarily their family to take care of. That extends significantly more to things such as black tax. We know that the pressures that exist for black people are significantly more because they're carrying more of the population. So when we talk about a lot of these things, I do feel like sometimes we discredit the value in resources in and of themselves. Because if people had resources, and if black people had resources to that extent, we wouldn't see things such as corruption. We wouldn't see individuals stealing grants. Because all of that frames and comes from the basis that individuals lack resources, require resources to survive. And this is not me defending corruption, because I think it's absolutely abhorrent in terms of what's happening in South Africa. I just think that my concern is that what ends up being done is that we put it as a race versus a race thing versus then a genuine humanity thing, which is to say, if a kid was without education, let's give them education. If a kid's without healthcare, let's give them healthcare. Yes, we can point at the top level politicians. We can point at the people who vote on these policies, but those aren't the majority of South Africans.
But, I like your school example, because you just ask a question of how many black kids, right? Because I'm guessing if you're speaking of an Afrikaans school, it would be more black, because colored people know Afrikaans largely, so you can't really include them. It's to say, okay, out of the black kids, there are going to be those that know Afrikaans at an Afrikaans school because they've gone through the system. Then maybe there's one or two that really just struggle. And it goes back to the question of, I'm just honest. I'm like, why did he send your kid there? I mean, because there are private Afrikaans schools. They really are. They exist. I'm like, I personally wouldn't send my kid to a school where it's like a vendor school. I don't speak vendor. I can't teach you. I cannot assist you in vendor. I honestly can't. So for me, hence I'm saying that we sort of take it out of context, and we've got to look at the majority that, okay, this has been a war school, cool. But I want to take it to what you're saying. This is a fight between communism and capitalism. Tell you one thing. Capitalism sells you a dream. Sells you a dream of self-independence, sells you a dream of self-determination and success. Communism does one thing. It taps into your struggle. Hence, it's very easy to resonate with communism. It taps into your psychological struggle, and it's very easy to connect with the situation that you are feeling at the moment. But because capitalism is a dream, it's something you've got to envision. South Africans lack vision. Hence, you see us tilting towards a communist society. Number three, you've got to, why did it slip from my head? But what was the point I was going to make? I was going to speak about, we were wrapping off with the BE and all these transformation agendas, right? And honestly speaking, yes, I've got it back. There's this thing called clever blacks. It's a new term.
Yeah.
Clever blacks. It's coined by Gwede Mantashe, the diesel engine of the ANC. But so now this term clever blacks basically separates the black middle class person from the black poor person. Now, I'm a believer of one thing. The black middle class are a very interesting group, and perhaps a group that you should blame for many of South Africa's problems, because they've not done a lot for South Africa. The black middle class don't participate in politics. They don't. They really don't. They don't. You must go and check. I was listening to Sama Sambit on our podcast with Mike, State of the Nation. Yes. I was not there though, he had a lot to say, but he calls me a clickbaiter. It's cool. We'll leave that. Oh, okay. But he mentioned that the EFF is becoming a popular thing amongst the youth, and says there's young communists now. And I wanted just to say, and I want to answer this while answering this question, is communists are very outspoken and they love to vote. The problem is the capitalists, the people that stay at home. The communists don't make up the majority of society, But because they go and vote, you think they are so mean. You think they are so mean. It's like the guy that just makes the most noise. You think everyone agrees because, oh gosh, he screams the most. But in actual fact, there's a huge, more than 50% of people in some provinces don't go and vote. That's different voices that we don't know. What are they thinking? What are their perspectives? What is 1, 2, 3? And I guess because we're wrapping up the show, and I'll share this here because I'll also share it on another podcast soon, is I have raised my hand to stand as a candidate. I'm going back straight into politics.
Wow.
Yeah, I've raised my hand to stand as a candidate under the DA, which means people won't think I'm neutral, obviously, but yeah, I'm raising my hand for that, and yeah, that's for next year's election, and we'll see how that goes.
Ooh, okay. I want to wish you the best of success in that, and hopefully we get to have you on as a mayor next time. I want to say thank you very much for this conversation. It's been very fruitful. Learned a lot, and I actually think there's a lot to think about. And to everyone else out there, to all the Born Free listeners, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, this is Born Free. Thank you very much.